Well, joining me now, Steve Aiken, the newly crowned leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, Sir Geoffrey Donaldson from the Democratic Unionist Party, instrumental in negotiating his party support for the last Conservative government, Chris Hazard from Sinn Fein, Claire Hanna from the Social Democratic and Labour Party, and Stephen Farry, the Deputy Leader of the Alliance Party. Welcome to you all. So, Geoffrey, if I can start with you, for the last, 2.5 years, you've supported a Westminster government that has now emerged with a Brexit deal that you hate. People voted for you to strengthen the union, and arguably it's never been more in peril. I'm wondering how that feels.
Well, of course, we reject the deal that Boris Johnson brought forward. In fact, it was our 10 votes in the House of Commons that blocked the deal. And the reason why Boris Johnson has now gone to the country without having delivered Brexit is precisely because the DUP stopped it in its tracks.
Well, to be fair, it passed, and you know that the reason...
No, it didn't pass, Emily, with respect. The second reading of a bill passed, but his deal was rejected by a majority of the House of Commons, and the timetable motion was rejected, which meant he couldn't take the bill forward.
Well, you've heard what Boris Johnson says. If he wins a majority now, he will get Brexit done, in his words, not ours. You've said that deal will be a disaster for the UK. Does that mean that Boris Johnson will be a disaster for the UK?
Well, if he pushes through this Brexit deal, it will not be with the support of any of the major political parties in Northern Ireland, and I think he needs to consider what that means for political stability here. If the objective of the government, and it's certainly our objective and our priority, is to get Stormont back up and running, is to get a fully functioning, devolved government here in Northern Ireland, it doesn't help if we have Westminster imposing a deal that is not supported by any main political party in Northern Ireland.
So if Boris Johnson is returned, let's say, short a few seats, would the DUP still bail him out? Or are you done with the Tories now?
Well, a lot depends on what he decides to do with this Brexit deal. We recognise that the deal in its current form is damaging to the union.
He looks like a man who's pressing on. So at that point, if he's pressing on,
well, he can't press on without a majority, Emily, in the House of Commons. And if the difference between him delivering his deal and not is 10 DUP votes in the House of Commons, we will use those votes effectively, as we have done in the past. And if we need to, we'll block this deal again until it changes, until we deal with the issues of concern to people here in Northern Ireland, which include...
What does that mean? To use them effectively? Because at the moment we're looking at a situation where you could be kingmakers. Now, if Boris Johnson is insistent on his deal, could the DUP take whatever number of seats you get and use them creatively with another party?
Well, that depends on whether there is another party that is capable of forming a government. That remains to be seen.
Could you work with Labour or with a party suggesting a second referendum?
We're keeping our options open at this stage. What we have made clear is that a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn, in our view, would also be disastrous for the United Kingdom, and we're opposed to that. But will Jeremy Corbyn still be the leader of the Labour Party after the election? We don't know. So we're keeping options open. We will act in the best interest of Northern Ireland in terms of what we need to do to prevent this deal being imposed in a way that damages our economy, damages our relationship
just help me out
with
here,
the rest
this
of the United Kingdom.
Fascinating, and people will be really keen to understand quite what you're saying. Are you now turning against Brexit? Would you be in favour of supporting whatever party or combination of parties allowed for a second referendum? Would that get your support if needed?
We want the United Kingdom to leave the European Union as one single unit, not what Boris Johnson has proposed.
Or not at all?
Which drives a trade border between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. In terms of the other options that might be available, we'll look at whatever comes forward, but our focus is on getting this deal changed. That's why we want a strong team back at Westminster to ensure that we can use that leverage and that influence to get the changes that we need to this deal. So we're not looking at things like referenda at this stage. We need to know what's happening with this deal. We need to know the outcome of a general election before we start looking at options other than
have you had any conversations with Boris Johnson in which he said to you, yes, I will be willing to change this deal to get you back if I don't get a majority on my own? Have you had any conversations like that?
Not in recent weeks, no. And what we're focused on is getting the strongest team possible back to Westminster so that we can ensure that Northern Ireland has a voice in this debate going forward.
But you're not ruling out supporting a second referendum?
Well, with respect, Emily, I'm not ruling it in either. I'm saying that we will look at the options that are available pending the outcome of the election. We think that the margins are narrowing. We think that we may well be heading again for a hung parliament. And in those circumstances, we will use our votes in the House of Commons to stop this deal, as we have done before the election, and to get changes that are necessary to ensure that Northern Ireland has full access to the rest of the United Kingdom.
I'm going to pick up with Chris Hazard from Sinn Fein now. And if nationalist voters are feeling very strongly that they want to shape or block Brexit, if they want to stop austerity, if they want to amplify the voice of Northern Ireland, why wouldn't they vote for the SDLP, for a party that can actually take up its seats?
Well, they very clearly in 2017 had that offer. And they decided not to. And it's because, again, and Jeffrey and the DUP are living in a fool's paradise if they think that Westminster will ever act in the interests of the people of Ireland and with Irish interests at heart. I think Brexit has proven ultimately that that has never been the case, and that will never, ever be the case. Instead, people here work constructively alongside Sinn Féin and other pro-Remain parties with the Irish government and the EU27. We went to the people in 2017.
There's no constructive work
we
at the
said,
moment.
Sorry, just let me finish this point. 2017 we said that we would protect the Good Friday Agreement, that we would ensure there'd be no hardening of the border, our all-Ireland economy would be protected, and there would be no unionist veto. All of those red lines are now fundamental parts of the European strategy to secure a Brexit deal. 59 Scottish MPs would snap your hand off for protections for Scotland to get. In 2 withdrawal deals so far, not once has there been any mention of Scotland. We are on the other side of the negotiating table from Westminster, from Britain's interests. They are not our interests. The people of here did not vote for Brexit.
But you are representing the people of Northern Ireland. And the people of Northern Ireland have not had a voice here because Stormont hasn't sat for 3 years. And they cannot have a voice through you. We understand your needs to abstain, that's understood, but they do not then have a voice in Westminster. They are not being heard. So why wouldn't they stand for Clare's party?
You just showed that clip that it sounded like the Unionist and Loyalist people were happy with their voice in Westminster at the minute. The DUP are living in a fool's paradise if they think that they're delivering. So the answer is to take it away completely. And I think the people of Britain are seeing, and might have some empathy now, as to why there's no Stormont here. They see the very toxic nature of the pact between the Tories and the DUP. They see how that is destabilised and how Brexit is destabilised.
And they also see 110,000 kids living in poverty here. They see NHS delays. They see tiny mental health budgets. They see that the civil service is running this country.
Tory austerity is as crippling here as it is in Liverpool and Manchester. Just this year, our education budgets are £250 million less this year as they were 10 years ago.
All right, so
that's
let's
brought to you
imagine
by Tory austerity.
There is somewhere at the back of people's mind the suspicion that if Boris Johnson's returned with a majority and his Brexit deal is passed, that you then are a significant step closer to the border poll, that actually this plays perfectly into nationalist hands.
We warned the DUP, we said, listen, the people here do not want Brexit. It is extremely damaging to our students, our young people, our farmers, our businesses. I represent a border constituency in South Down. I know the hugely economically wasteland that Brexit and a hard Tory Brexit would do. We warned the DUP. It wasn't us. We advocated to remain against Brexit. It's the DUP who wanted this, and that is
It still serves your purposes. I want to bring in some of the smaller parties. Do come in. Steve Farry, I'm going to go to you for the Alliance. Doesn't have a great track record of winning seats. I'm wondering why you think this time will be any different.
Well, we have in the past, back in 2010, and we've good prospects this time as well. I mean, we are a liberal cross-community party, neither Unionist nor Nationalist, representing the point about bringing Northern Ireland together. I think in terms of Brexit, we have a broad reach right across the community in terms of standing up for Remain.
Well, interesting, you heard the young people in the film. They say that they want parties to work together, they want to stop Brexit, and they look at the Alliance, which is too high-minded to step aside or to work with PACs. You're not listening to what the younger generations even want.
I'm not quite sure why we have to apologise for actually putting forward our vision and our values to the electorate. It's what political parties exist to do.
Not if they only win one seat every 10 years.
We work with other parties beforehand, and we will work with other parties afterwards. And we have, in many seats, we are the best placed to come through and represent that Remain voice. But Emily, Northern Ireland only works based upon sharing and interdependence. We are a very complex society, and the difficulty here is that any form of Brexit is going to create some division, some barrier, and that creates a sense of winners and losers. And that's why, for Northern Ireland, there is no such thing as good Brexit, and why a people's vote has to be the mechanism through which we address Brexit.
Claire, what would be your response to this? Because you and Chris, your two parties, have stood aside for each other in certain places. Should the alliance be part of that, or do you recognise that they're the most democratic?
And the Green Party, it's worth saying. I mean, the fact is, we did it the other way in 2017. We all ploughed our own furrow, we all protected our percentages for our next graph, and we woke up with 10 toxic DUP MPs who held the balance of power for 2.5 years, and 2.5 years of stalemate and possibly the worst form of Brexit. And as Stephen said, there is no good form. So yes, people did want
They
us to
sound
work
like they're
together.
back on your side now. They don't want this deal either.
Well, even a broken clock is
and they
right
brought you
twice
£1 billion,
a day,
didn't they?
but clearly for 2.5 years they have voted for the hardest form of Brexit at every possible opportunity. So yes, people did want us to work together because they do need a voice. Nobody's dying about Westminster. Nobody thinks all our dreams will come true there, but we know that whatever solidarity, and we've had huge solidarity from the rest of the EU and from Dublin, it will be the 650 MPs who will make or break Brexit, and it will be the 650 MPs who vote on issues around the National Health Service, and we desperately need a voice there, and voice that can represent.
And you call
Remain
it
across
a
the
Remain
community.
alliance, but some will see this, as you know, as a pan-nationalist. Like, you're shaking your head already, so you know that I'm going to say that.
Because it isn't true, and I think one of the young people in your video said so. This is an issue that has transcended the Constitution. Yes, absolutely, people will still have their constitutional views.
But
yes,
what do you
there is
say
a
to your
major
voters? Let's
conversation to have
imagine that
there.
somebody has always voted for your party, the SDLP, in places where you're now not standing, and they have to give their vote. They are being mandated pretty much to give their vote to an abstentionist party. Why wouldn't they go to the alliance? Why would they go to Steve?
Well, they're not mandated to give their vote to anybody. We stood aside in 3 constituencies, one where Sinn Fein can win, one where the Alliance Party can win, in fact 2 now where the Alliance Party can win. We had stood aside for the independent unionist Lady Sylvia Herman, although she isn't standing again.
Yeah.
So 1/3 of the seats, yes, is where Sinn Fein are standing.
And will you be kicking yourself
I don't
if
agree
the DUP...
I don't agree with abstentionism. But as our leader has said, he would prefer that MP sitting in his house than them sitting in the House of Commons, damaging our future.
Steve Aiken, let me come to you, the UUP. You used to be aligned with the Conservatives under David Cameron. You were very close.
A long time ago, Emily.
Well, it wasn't
a long
that long
time
ago.
So the DUP are the ones who are aligned with the Conservatives. They've kept them in power with their
Okay, so
confidence
where
and
are you
supply
now
agreement.
then? Because this is critical. You've said that the DUP are fundamentally undermining the union.
Emily, let's say, honestly, 2nd of October, the DUP agreed to a border down the Irish Sea.
We didn't.
Arlene Foster said this is a sensible agreement. That opened the door for Boris Johnson to come through with his withdrawal agreement. 2 weeks after that, we're in the position with Boris Johnson produced this withdrawal agreement.
They're such a menace to you, this party, that you're not even standing against them in Nigel Dodd's own seat. Why not?
Because the choice in Nigel Dodd's seat, if you just look behind you over there in North Belfast, the choice very clearly was for somebody who's actually going to go to Westminster, who's pro-union, or an abstentionist who's just going to take the expenses.
But I don't understand where you are now, because...
But the people of North Belfast, their key is they actually want an MP who's actually going to be held to account. That's not going to happen in this situation. What we need to do is make sure that we get people who are going back to Westminster. That's what the Ulster Unionist Party is about. We want to make sure that we are returning people to Westminster who are actually going to represent us.
But what would they do then? What would they do? Would they work with Boris Johnson, or would they work with Jeremy Corbyn? Now, where is the UUP? Where would you align yourselves now?
No, the Ulster Unionist Party's position. We are there to make sure that Boris Johnson's deal is stopped.
Everyone here is. I mean, that is the one thing that unites all of the
That is a good thing. We are actually
now.
united in one thing. We want to stop Boris Johnson's deal because it would be absolutely disastrous for Northern Ireland. What we want to do is make sure there are no borders, north, south or east or west.
OK, now let me be honest, you're suffering at the moment. You are a very minor party. You are trying to be progressive.
The 3rd largest party in Northern Ireland, so I'm not quite sure where you get the, we're minor party piece.
Well, explain to me then where your positioning is, because we understand what the DUP is. They are social conservative, they're anti-gay marriage, they're anti-abortion. You want to be a progressive party, but with... Is that right?
And what is wrong with that? We want to see a modern progressive unionism that links in with the rest of the United Kingdom. The future of Northern Ireland needs to be part of the United Kingdom. It needs to be a vibrant, confident future. Listen, 30% of our kids, when they finish their A-levels, go to universities in Great Britain. Most of them stay there because they like Manchester, they like Liverpool, they like Edinburgh.
I get it, Steve.
We want to make Northern Ireland like that. And actually, Northern Ireland can be like that. Let's make Northern Ireland work again. That's what we want to do.
Why did your party only find one woman candidate then? I mean, how progressive is that?
I would love to have had at least half of our candidates women, and that's one of the things that we're
suggests your
setting out to
party's
do.
not really with you. Maybe your voters aren't with you either.
We're working on it, and we will be doing that for the future. But Northern Ireland is about much more than the past. We want to be looking confidently to the future, and that's what we need to do.
I'm just interested now to bring you together because, as I said, this is an extraordinary moment in a way. There is a unity amongst the five of you that you all want to stop
Boris Johnson.
Brexit.
Yeah.
Right. So how does that happen now?
Well, I mean, the point is there's no good form of Brexit. Brexit, all of the lines that the Good Friday Agreement softened around the border, around sovereignty, around identity, Brexit sharpens it up. Many of us warned of that in advance of the referendum. So yes, any form of Brexit will be toxic here. It will contribute to the fact, and it has contributed to the fact, that we have had no government for 1,000 days. But we don't believe that the UK government has been listening. That's why it's so vital that we elect MPs who will go and tell
because
them.
in I think it's 2021, we will be looking at 100 years of Northern Ireland. Do you give it another decade, or are we heading towards a border party?
No, we give it. Let's give it 50, 100, whatever years it is, but we need to make Northern Ireland work again. That's one of the things we need to do.
This is a conversation that's alive. There are major shifts happening, but we do need to look after people in the here and now
I think, as your video said, Brexit has been the accelerant to the debate that's been happening for a long time. We're seeing demographic change in the north. We're seeing people who want to be European. They want to live in a progressive society. They want civil liberties and civil rights that everybody else across the country.
Just as it gets noisy, we'll stop. Thank you for coming in. You can find more information on the other parties standing in Northern Ireland, their policies and the election policy guide on the BBC website.